Yes, we were just discussing how the tensions with Russia are escalating in such a way that it could lead to a full war. And you had a comment about the way the press is dealing with this in the Scandinavian countries.
Well, there is a lot of war-like rhetoric in the also in countries like Sweden and Finland. Russian propaganda, yes, is included, but also in the Western media you find this. And if you do not really follow what's going on, you might think from the headlines in the evening press in Sweden and Finland that Russia is about to attack these countries any day, which is totally ridiculous. But it's only a small step from hate speech to hate acts, likewise from war rhetoric to war. So far the Baltic Sea region has been an arena for the show of military force. And we must see to it that will not come an arena for the use of military force.
One of the things that we think is behind this crisis is that after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was an idea on the part of a certain faction in the United States and Britain that we will never again allow other countries to come up to superpower to our level. And what we've seen with the economy is that at the same time the Western financial crisis is deepening, you have China with the new Silk Road and further integration of Russia and China economic development programs. And what do you see as the basis of the increasing tensions? Why is it that factions in the West are trying to increase the confrontation with Russia?
Well, I wouldn't subscribe to any conspiracy theories about this. It's more a question of misjudgment and mistakes made, maybe even with good intentions. But any mistakes that the West has made, and it has certainly done so, in my opinion, in its dealings with Russia, of course, do not give any justification for the Russian acts contrary to international law. But we have to be open about the past as well. We do not know if we could have avoided this situation, but we must go through all of what has taken place because avoiding any mistakes in the future is also necessary for getting out of this vicious circle of confrontation and a step-by-step return to more normal relations.
There are some people who say that the European policy towards Russia is too soft. There was an attempt to get more sanctions at the last minister meeting that did not go through, and there is an attempt to increase the tensions.
Well, there will always be different opinions, and there were in the European Council as well. While some were for applying more sanctions against Russia, also there were voices calling for lifting of sanctions. So what took place was that the mainstream opinion became the outcome.
Mm-hmm. There are also things about escalation, like there's now a decision to station U.S. troops on the in Norway, in northern Norway, on the border with Russia, and the missile defense system, which the Russians see as very provocative. There have been decisions to increase the NATO stationing in the Baltic countries and in Poland. How do you see the effect of these will have?
These are understandable in the light of the concerns that these countries have for historical reasons. Whether or not they are founded, that's another case, but they are understandable and reasons for reassurance. I don't think actually that the Russians are militarily worried about this more or less symbolic increase of NATO presence in these countries. But what they are worried about is the missile defense, which is a strategic global issue.
Yeah, because that was always spoken about. The cover was that it was against Iran, but the Russians say that really doesn't make sense, and now it should have been taken a decision to take it down after the agreement with Iran.
Well, it is not only Iran, it's North Korea also, which is a very worrying case in any way elsewhere.
How do you see, what should we do to come back from the brink that could, by calculation or miscalculation, lead to direct war with Russia?
Well, tone down the propaganda and the warmongering on all sides. A much more realistic approach is needed, and then working on a very pragmatic basis in concrete cooperation, because notwithstanding this rhetoric and increase in tensions, it has so far not affected cooperation in many spheres, like the Arctic Council, the Euro-Barents Council, or the Northern Dimension. It has not been in anyone's interest to introduce new tensions into this very pragmatic cooperation. So I don't think we are yet seeing any return to a global Cold War. For one thing, it's not going to be global because most of the world would not join it on any side.
And what about the role of dropping the sanctions and increasing the economic cooperation?
To drop the sanctions, we need to have some sort of progress on the Minsk agreements in Ukraine. Now, we cannot fault solely Russia for the fact that they have not been implemented fully. There are also issues on the Ukrainian side. But any positive development should be met by the dropping or diminishing of the sanctions. Crimea will remain a different story. There are sanctions on Crimea, and they will remain in place for the foreseeable future, even if we do have an agreement on the rest of Ukraine. But in other circumstances in the future, I do believe that there can be found a solution acceptable to all, also on Crimea, but the time is not ready for that yet.
Finland, because of its geographic location and the history, is especially, these questions are especially important for Finland. Has there been a debate in Finland about the danger of escalation and what needs to be done?
Well, there's a whole ongoing debate, of course. There is a minority, smaller minority, working to get Finland as a member of NATO. So that is one factor in the Finnish public debate, but there are also other strands, and I think that generally even we as an opposition party support the way that our president has tried to handle the situation.
Do you have anything else to say about this question?
A lot, but not